Wow, but if I were you. Like,
was that a really sped up version of the body form ad?
Yeah, they don't make ads like that these days, do they? They don't make them anymore.
No. Some would say that ad never really went away.
Those ads, those bangers, it was such a jam. Anyway, from one jam to a James Bond.
Putting the jam in James Bond, we went to the pictures.
Yeah, to the cinema.
Full house for the first time since, well, probably 2 years. That was a weird experience. Because normally when we go, there's only like 10 people in there for 50 seats.
Oh, right, okay.
It was completely full. And can you tell everyone what happened when we turned up? We'd booked 2 seats together because we thought it'd be sociable. What happened?
So we walk in there, we find our seat, and there's a guy sitting in it. Okay, it's a dark room. The trailers were on. Maybe he just sat where he thought he could sit. And we said to him, "Oh, sorry, mate, there are seats." You know what the cheeky sod said?
Tell us.
He said, "Oh, mate, there are 2 seats over there." I said, "No, thank you. We'll sit in our seats." And he got up and walked away to his correct seat. But the thing was, our seats were in a prime real estate.
They were the best seats in the house.
Back row, middle.
As per our brand, the
middle
back
of
row.
yeah. And yeah, of course, we're on brand. And he thought he could just get away with it.
Yeah, but the ones he pointed to were like wedged into the corner. The worst ones in the house.
Just don't try it, people. Don't talk and don't steal other people's seats. And I specifically say that to people, not gremlins, because gremlins just wouldn't do that.
Gremlins have not forgotten how to behave during the pandemic.
We have etiquette and politeness straight out the egg. We hatch with it all.
It's ingrained.
Right, let's go. Boom. Let's dive into James Bond.
Musica?
Oh, Musica. What have we got, 007?
So this week's new movie is the big one. The one that was meant to be released 18 months ago and is finally out. No Time to Die. The 400th installation in the James Bond franchise. That's pretty accurate, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not enough. I need more. More.
So we all know James Bond. Everyone knows this movie's out. Every single cinema is screening it in every screen every day. Shall I nonetheless give us the rundown on the latest and greatest Daniel Craig outing as 007?
Yeah, go for it. I'm actually going to look for the box office numbers because that'd be quite interesting to see how this movie is faring. So yeah, why don't you kick things off?
I'll just refer to my notes.
Go.
So, Commander James Bond, as we're reminded is his full title, is on, I think he's on his gap here when the movie opens, with Léa Seydoux, Madeline, his girlfriend, and they're in a lovely town in the mountains in Italy, and it's totally gorgeous. They're staying in very expensive hotels, and they have a very nice car. James Bond takes a morning trip to a nearby grave site of, is it his ex, Vesper?
Yep.
From one of the other movies. And while he's there, he picks up he sees a business card outside the gravestone for Spectre. As he sees it, he gets blown up. He survives because he's James Bond. And then when he makes it back to the hotel, he essentially blames that on Madeline. He thinks that she has given him away and told someone what his location is, and they have a big row and they say goodbye to each other at the train station.
Can I just interject for a second there? If you ever want to find James Bond, if you're a supervillain out there and you want to find James Bond, just go to any coastal, high-end, bespoke part of the world. Preferably south coast of France or Italy, anywhere around there, or in the Caribbean, and that's exactly where it'll be. There's like 10 locations where it'll be.
Start on the Amalfi Coast, go to the 6-star hotels.
Anywhere with that sandy-coloured buildings.
Yeah,
like he's there. Sandy. Maybe a few washing lines that he can swing around on when he's chasing assailants.
And he's out and about at sunset when it looks gorgeous. So cut to 5 years later. And he's actually retired and he's living it up in Jamaica in some kind of spy beach house. While he's there, Felix calls, his CIA friend. And then shortly after Felix calls, so does the new 007, because his agent number has been taken over.
Lashana.
By Lashana Lynch. And she turns up as well. Then, to cut a long story short, the three of them end up going off to Cuba to investigate a Spectre meeting. When he gets there, he teams up with Ana de Armas. Do you remember her from Knives Out? And what else was she in?
I don't know, but she's amazing.
She's so good. She's really good. And she's awesome in this. When they get to this kind of party in Havana, Spectre all die from some mysterious sudden illness via a gas that's released from the ceiling. But James Bond doesn't. And that's the first clue as to the secret superweapon that's in development in this movie. So clearly something very big's going on. Bond goes back to London and reunites basically with the gang. Q, Moneypenny, M, all the letters. It's a bit like It Part 2. Meanwhile, Rami Malek's character is the evil villain, who's always in a judo outfit and a theatrical mask, is the one developing this kind of super virus that can destroy people selectively. Also, Blofeld, played by Christoph Waltz, is still around. He's in prison, so he's still on the scene. And Bond gets thrown back together with Madeline after 5 years of not seeing her because she's the only psychotherapist that Blofeld will speak to while he's in prison. Bond follows Madeline back to her home in, I think it's the Faroe Islands. Looks like Norway or Denmark or Sweden. Well, but I read that it's filmed in the Faroe Islands at least.
I mean, that's a bit of a tricky one in the film because he suddenly goes from London, he drives out of London, and then he drives into the next shot, which is meant to be the Faroe Islands, but for a moment you could be forgiven thinking he's just gone to Scotland or something.
Also, she's working in London, so I guess she commutes back to the Faroe Islands every day, where she's got her daughter in that little island cabin. Anyway, yeah, she's got a daughter. More on that later. 5-year-old girl called Mathilde. While they're on the island, they get hunted down by the baddies. They escape into the forest. James Bond picks off loads of people. There's a big chase sequence. It's very exciting. And that's really when the race against time starts to track down Rami Malek and his operation, go to the inevitable secret island base, and stop him from world domination. And I'm going to leave it there because lots of things come into the plot in the third act that we had a big debate about this. We're not going to be spoiler gremlins, are we?
No, only because I think this film is going to mean so much to so many people, and I think we wouldn't want to take away that kind of a moment of emotion that you're going to have at different parts of the movie. So
which we definitely felt.
But also, guys, if you want to hear that, do let us know, and we can perhaps do a follow-up episode where we talk about that. Also, in terms of covering everything within the movie, there is a lot to cover. I think more than any other James Bond movie, there were so many different scenes and locations and, new dramas unfolding all the time. It's actually quite a lot to get through. And there were moments in the film where you did switch off a bit, and I think that's why it is actually getting some mixed reviews from a lot of critics. Although it's doing really well at the box office, it's on track to be the most successful James Bond film in terms of opening weekend. There is a lot in there to unpack. But for me, if we want to jump into my thoughts, this was more, rather than it being just another instalment in the James Bond franchise, or indeed the last film that we'll see Daniel Craig in the title role. For me, it was more of I've got here, it was a love letter, and it was a love letter and a goodbye letter to all of us from Daniel Craig and his character. It's very much it's not you, it's me text. I almost feel like the plot and the narrative was secondary to ensuring that we felt this emotional connection to James Bond's character, well, aka Daniel Craig, and we kind of got more insights into who James Bond actually is. And I would say we get more of that in this film than we do in any other film. So for me, the film was more about that, and I actually found the storyline with this kind of super virus that's made of nanobots, and that's actually one of the points I was going to make later, that more than any other James Bond movie, there was so much tech in this film. And actually what made the new iterations of James Bond so good with Daniel Craig is because they made the film a little bit more realistic. There wasn't, exploding watches or, cars turning into bikes or this kind of stuff. It was very much set in reality, and that's what I loved about the movies. And this movie kind of takes me out of that a bit. You know, they have some of the kind of technology is just a bit silly. But then again, I think that's a nice segue into my first point here. This movie does a really nice thing, which is really special in terms of paying homage to all those iconic Bond moments. So, you know, the sexy lady that he spent a night with, he leaves her asleep, face down on the bed with like a silk sheet covering her modesty. And the villain has an island, but it's a very contemporary looking space. There I got my wrists going again. Like I'm geriatric or something. I assure you I'm not.
But also on the first point, when he leaves Lea Seydoux in the hotel, it's because he's in a functional, ongoing relationship with her. It's not that thing if he swoops into a territory, meets a lady spy, spends the night with her, and then moves on. And often they die.
Agreed. But I think just from I was talking about it more so from like a visual point of view, that I felt like that shot of him walking away, kissing the girl, he's done several times. The strongest example I can think of that is when he does the same thing to Terry Hatcher, but she's dead. The original Bond car was featured with the machine gun turrets. How amazing was that? It was so great. I thought in Skyfall when Judi Dench says to him, or M says to James Bond, what are you going to do? Eject me? Using the ejector seat. I thought that was as deep as we were going to get to or go to with in terms of talking about the original Bond car, but it was great to see that in this movie. Also, the bit where he turns down a tunnel and points the gun, we actually got to see that in real time in the film rather than it just being a scene in the credit sequence.
You're right. So
really cool.
The iconic bit where he looks down kind of the barrel of the lens in
the gun, I think it is.
Yeah, in the opening titles in every film, that actually happens for real. Yeah. Within the kind of structure of the lair that he's in. Yeah, that's good.
Really cool.
So clever.
My name's Ryan. I'm from the Valley, and it was really cool. Okay. Great introductions in terms of female characters. I hope we see them again in the new iterations of the movie. You've mentioned Lashana Lynch, great British actress. I don't know what much more to say about her. Great comic timing. Well, she's very physical.
She's from West London, like
she's
all
from
great
West
people.
London.
So.
Take that back. Some great people are from West London. Ana de Armas, the actress we talked about earlier, she's fantastic. Great comedic timing, great physical role. They were both just, I could watch kind of an offshoot movie if James Bond or the studio that makes it aren't willing to go with a female 007. I'd quite happily watch a 008 and or 008 and a 009 featuring these two actors. It was great.
I thought it's such a shame though. Lashana didn't have enough to do, and every time she sort of seemed to get going, and I was getting really, really excited by what it was she was doing. We cut somewhere else, or she'd be left out of the action.
Well, I think a big part of that is James Bond is playing to use the US political term, the base, and I think if they gave this young black actress too much airtime and too much of a pivotal role, then it may alienate some moviegoers, and unfortunately that's the world we live in when we look at franchises. And evidence of this is during the film, Lashana, who has the title of 007, actually gives it back to Bond in the third act and says to M, at this point I'd like to request that James Bond retain his 007 title, despite the fact for the first two halves of the movie she was adamant that she was the new 007. So for me, I thought that was just a little bit of a play to make some of the audience feel a little bit more comfortable.
And M goes for it really quickly, even though earlier on he's been like, James, but you're nothing to do with this place. Take your guest pass and get out of here. Like, you're nothing to us. We've got a new 007. And then later, when he kind of goes over to Q's flat with Moneypenny, it's all a bit Famous Five. They're like, let's get together and look people up on the internet and find them. Because M won't approve.
Poor patching up of different plots and storylines just to get to the next one. For example, when M says, "Oh, Bond, we assumed you were dead, so..." What, then he stops becoming a 007? He didn't leave. It was just
we've closed your email account. Yeah. Sorry.
And the other name is now gone. Someone else has it.
But your stuff's in Lost and Found, so you can reclaim that.
Funnily enough, I don't know if anyone else noticed this, but there were a few Silence of the Lambs quotes in there.
Here we go.
And I don't know... can you still hear the lambs screaming, Clarice? I don't know if this was deliberate.
I just don't remember him saying that line.
He didn't say that bit. But there were a couple of things. So when they're going to see, I always go to call him Penfold, but that's from Danger Mouse. When they're going to see, what's his name? The bad guy in the penitentiary.
Rami Malek.
No, the bad guy.
Blofeld. I get why you got Penfold out of Blofeld.
When they go to see Blofeld, and James Bond's getting ushered through to his cell, which looks like the cell that Magneto was held in X-Men.
And his means of getting out of the cell looks like a Thorpe Park ride.
Yeah,
at the beginning when it's really slow.
And someone says to 007, "Don't let him get inside your head, James. Don't use it against you." And I was like, "Okay, well, that's very
right inside his
Hannibal
head.
Lecter." And then there's another scene where when he's speaking to Penfold, James Bond is not Penfold. Blofeld says, "You're asking the wrong questions," which is very similar to La Silence the Lambs.
Is Penfold's catchphrase "crumbs" and is he voiced by David Jason?
I don't know who
was
he might be. No, David Jason was Danger Mouse.
Oh, he was okay. He was.
He wouldn't have
Mouse.
David Jason playing this minor role.
Oh, I don't know.
So yeah, as I said at the beginning, this movie was a bit emotional. Not necessarily because of the plot, just because it brought a whole era to the end. Weirdly, I didn't feel any amount of sadness with Pierce Brosnan's last James Bond, and I would say for our age group, he was Timothy Dalton.
Yeah.
And Pierce Brosnan was the chunk of the kind of, I don't know, our childhood, so you'd think that meant more. But actually, Daniel Craig's James Bond obviously meant more to me than I thought it did. So I never thought I would get emotional or a little bit emotional at a Daniel Craig asset or a movie. But there was one quote at the end of the film which I wanted to read to you because it was actually quite compelling. It was first published in the San Francisco Bulletin in 1916 and later served as an introduction to a series of London short stories in 1956. Okay, so I would rather be ashes than dust. I would rather be that my spark should burn out in a brilliant blaze than it should be stifled by dry rot. I would rather be a superb meteor, every atom of me in magnificent glow, than a sleepy and permanent planet. The proper function of man is to live, not to exist. I shall not waste my days in trying to prolong them. I shall use my time. And thought that was such a brilliant quote and spoke to, I think, the stoic, stiff upper lip-ness of the whole, spy, governmental MI5, MI6.
That's written
character.
by Kurt Cobain, right?
No.
Who wrote it? Who's the mind behind those wonderful words?
It doesn't say. I just told you. I just told you all the
Anon.
information I had. Yeah.
Good old Anon. Writes loads of stuff. I found, I definitely got the sadness. I found it really unusual that there was a child in that, Bond it's always been such an adult franchise.
Oh, Bond's got a kid.
We're allowed that spoiler. The world is very full of, grown-ups and adults who've made decisions and, there just is never really a place for children in it. So that was quite a strange, unusual thing, but I think it worked quite well. She looked a little bit like one of those porcelain Victorian dolls, didn't she?
Yeah, a little bit. A little on the scary side. So, I had one last thing to say about this movie, and this is taken from an article in the NME. Because I was thinking, I wonder what Daniel Craig was like on set in shooting this movie. And what was the feeling and the
probably
tone
very
apart
nice.
From so Enemy reports, when describing their final encounter on set, Léa Seydoux, said that while she knows that Craig is prudish and shy about his emotions, nevertheless, she saw that his experience was quite something, and to see him like that was quite an experience for the co-star. She was very sad, and but she didn't show it, but she did cry.
And when Léa Seydoux cries, she does this thing where all the pain and the emotion is in her face, and then her eyes just slowly brim up with, like in an anime when someone cries, and it's really kind of artistic, and she's so good at that. She's just fantastic in it, and Daniel Craig as well. This, as you said earlier, this movie was so much more about the character of Bond than any of the others put together, and he's just great. He handled that really well, but he's also so great in the chase sequences. I forgot how the look on his face is just, he is absolutely not going to let someone get him or get away with something, or...
And he was ripped.
Yeah. He's so
ripped.
you so believe that he's gonna win and he's gonna beat the odds every single time. Even as you say, when he's struggling to get up the stairs and has to use the stair lift. It was very computer gamey, that sequence in the base when he's going up, I think it's 10 flights of stairs, and it's a gunfight, which you always think is easy, but he makes it look really, really exhausting, doesn't he?
Yeah, well, again, for your eagle-eyed gremlins out there, you'll notice that some of the fight sequences were CGI, but particularly in the boat and the close quarter fighting, which I hadn't seen before. So I guess maybe that is also because he's getting older a bit, but it was a little bit distracting. I thought it was unnecessary. Just drop the fight sequence rather than doing it CGI. It was a bit weird.
The only issue I had with it was maybe from a perspective of ableism. It's still doing that thing where if someone has facial scars or is missing an eye or has a false eye, then they're by default evil. And I think that is still quite, or that is more and more problematic today than it ever used to be. And it was a shame when they seem to be making so much progress to the franchise that's traditionally quite kind of parochial and male-centered and hetero, that element hadn't really been addressed at all. Just remembered as well, just my closing thought, didn't you find the whole plot around, disease that could be spread really quickly, and there's this device which means that if you see somebody you can basically activate the disease in them, and that's really dangerous for them. Didn't you find that really, really accidentally quite poignant in the wake of the whole COVID thing? I mean, obviously they couldn't have known, but it was strangely resonant with that.
Well, I think with that, just to give you guys some context, so this disease that we're talking about is actually a series of nanobots that you can program to target certain elements of someone's DNA. So if you wanted to kill me, you would target the nanobots to only respond to my DNA and kill me. So the nanobots, who obviously minuscule and you can't see them, could live on another surface or on somebody else, but would only cause harm to me. And I think there was a strong, almost post-colonial message with that, and bear with me, but because a few characters make reference to this, particularly one of the bad doctors who says to Lashana, the new 007, I know you're from the West African diaspora, I could destroy your race in a moment.
Oh yeah.
So I think there was the whole thing there about actually this disease can target particular ethnic minorities or particular DNA strands, and that I think speaks to a bigger issue of different races and how people are treated and genocide, all those kind of things. So that's what I took away from it.
That also gives her one of the many chances she has to show that somebody else can do that clipped, quippy, ironic, wry James Bond one-liner. She does it so well as well. She says, do you know what time it is? Time to die. Just pushes him off. Brilliant. It's really funny.
All right, well, God, we banged on about this movie, haven't we?
We didn't even talk about the fact Phoebe Waller-Bridge was doing dialogue in it at a later stage. One of my faves, as you know. But I think that comes across with lots of the gags. It's a very funny film, and it's a movie that really celebrates people speaking English in funny and inventive ways. Sounds like a really strange thing to say, but it was a joy to listen to. That said, there were whole scenes where it felt really clunky. I didn't enjoy the Blofeld and Bond scene at all. I thought it was really boring, and Christoph Waltz was massively underused. By the way, do you remember that time we saw Christoph Waltz in the airport, and
City
it was me who
Airport.
spotted him? And I'm never the one who spots celebrities.
No.
Good times.
So before we end with me singing another famous 80s TV advert, the music too, I am going to give this movie... So the movie itself, I would give 4 handfuls of popcorn.
Yeah, fair.
But when I add the everything else and how it made me feel, what movies are meant to do, they're meant to pull emotions out of you.
Yeah.
I'm going to give it a 5.
Yeah.
Purely because I actually did feel very sad by the time I got to tens of movies. So 5 handfuls from me.
5 for me too, for exactly the same reasons. Not if you've never seen a Bond film and you watch this one, you wouldn't necessarily give it 5 stars, but with everything that's come before and as a conclusion to this era of Bond, it is definitely 5 stars.
Gino Ginelli.
Was that ice cream?
Yes.
Oh, great.
And then there was I can't remember, what was the
Was there
butter
one
that
for
starts
Viennetta?
It probably went, Viennetto, give it to me.
I have one. The one for oranges. Grab an outspan, they live longer naturally.
Was that Orangina?
No, it's outspan oranges. Maybe Orangina used them in their
I don't
Orangina
remember
making
the
process.
specific brand of oranges from a child, but I like salty.
And I like sweet popcorn. See you on the back row.
Or like, shortly.
Hola, gremlitos and gremlitas. Welcome back. This week. Don't
Guilty.
always whisper that when I say anything. This week's classic and a Halloween theme is The Fog from John Carpenter. And to take us through what happens in it is Ryan from Popcorn Gremlins.
Gremlins, welcome. Welcome to my crypt. I assure you I do not look like a crypt keeper.
Welcome to my foggy crypt.
Yeah, this movie, John Carpenter, anyone who follows our Instagram will know that I'm a massive John Carpenter fan, particularly of not only his cinematic work in terms of the visuals, but all of the amazing soundtracks and movie songs that he puts into his films. The anthology album is amazing, so I'm a big fan, so I've got a lot to say about this. So The Fog was released in 1980, so 2 years after Halloween. The reason that's relevant is because Jamie Lee Curtis, who famously stars in Halloween, also features and stars in this, along with her mother, Janet Leigh, of Psycho fame. So Janet Leigh was married to Tony Curtis, and they had Jamie Lee Curtis, a little baby. I think she's got a sister. The movie also stars the amazing Ariane Barbeau, who you may recognise from films like Assault on Precinct 13. She was married to John Carpenter for about 6 years. So I think maybe that played a role in why she got this movie.
Sheer nepotism, but she's also good in it.
Yeah, I mean, she is amazing. She's one of those 70s chicks with like a plaid shirt and like those tight jeans and smoking loads of cigarettes and big hair. She just looks really cool. And this role was actually written for her. Yeah, and this role was actually written for her by John Carpenter, her then husband. So, interesting fact before I start, the fog in the movie was shot in reverse. Which I thought was really interesting.
Oh, as in the...
Well, it's released in reverse, yeah. It wasn't shot in reverse.
Wait.
It was reverse footage.
Oh, yeah, so they filmed the actual in-camera effect of the fog and then reversed it to make it more kind of...
Have more life.
Yeah,
and have more purpose to it, I guess.
Yeah.
Some more fun facts about the movie. We almost got a completely different version of this movie as John Carpenter was so disappointed with the first run at this, that they had to spend another $1.1 million on reshooting it. So it's only it's almost one third of the movie that is original. The rest of it has been reshot. John Carpenter was famous for saying, when he first saw it, I thought it was terrible. The movie didn't work, and I knew in my heart that was the case. So,
oh, John.
Fun fact. And I'm turning my screen away because I want you to answer this. Charlie, what's the difference between fog and mist?
Is mist on the ground and fog is in the air?
No, that I have heard that before, actually. But National Geographic tells me...
I've read that in Crackers and Fortune Cookies.
The difference between the two depends on how well you can see. Mist is less dense than fog. If you can't see beyond 1 kilometre or 2/3 of a mile in front of you, it's fog that's clouding your vision. If you can see more than that, it's just mist. So the myth...
You could be in the mist and then it becomes fog.
Yeah, exactly.
Nightmare. Total nightmare.
Oh God, the clash of those two movies. It's just not worth leaving the house. So anyway, rundown-wise, I'm such a big fan of this movie, I'm just going to do it off the cuff. I haven't even got any notes.
No,
the only thing I have written in front of me here is I'm going to wing it because I'm such a big fan, and the only thing I'll say is Captain Birdseye is sitting on the beach with the boys. That's my opener.
Yeah,
which would not go down well now.
Yeah, he's just on the beach at night telling scary stories to like 10 kids under the age of 9 or 8. The story that he's telling is no supervision. The story he's telling is a kind of a mythological tale of how the town was built. Now, that's what a story looks like. I'm not going to go into loads of detail, but basically there was a pirate ship that 100 years ago ran on shore, crashed onto the rocks, and all of the pirates died and they became ghosts.
And he's telling the kids that 100 years from them, they're going to come back to the shore and try and kill everyone. Coincidentally, at the same time, the town is celebrating their centenary because everyone's getting really excited, and they're building, looking to have parties and all that kind of thing. So everyone's really happy.
But it is also a movie that's obsessed with numbers and dates, and it's like 100 years ago, and it's like at midnight on the 21st of April, and it's 6 people that the ghost sailors have to kill every 100 years.
You're really jumping ahead here. Can't just say gremlin. You've been a real gremlin right now.
Just stealing the limelight because this rundown's so good.
So as there's some shadiness in that. So anyway, as the movie ensues, everything's kind of normal and everyone's planning for this centenary. And then the night before, the penultimate night before the actual 100th anniversary, where they're going to have the actual party, crazy things start going on in the town when the clock strikes midnight. Cars start turning on by themselves, fridges start shaking, power lines are falling down, light bulbs are going out, dogs start barking at the sea. There's one quite scary scene where a guy is working in a corner store, I guess, and it's closed, and he's just cleaning it out, and it's all dark, and I'm thinking, God, it'd be really scary to work in a convenience store in the 70s. No cameras, no alarm alarm sisters, and that was kind of probably one of the most scariest moments of the movie for me. So anyway, so the next morning, everyone kind of thinks, okay, well, that was a bit weird last night, and they realise that a boat full of some of the townsfolk, fishermen, has not returned. So they go out to look for the boat, can't find the boat, then they find the boat, and it has a crew member on there who's dead. They bring him back. They're really surprised because they've only been out for a day, but his body looks like he's been in the water for a month. He then comes to life, tries to chase people, then he falls down dead. So everybody's like, right, this is really weird now. Yeah. This is really weird.
This is really out of order.
Yeah, this is really...
this is highly irregular. That's what they all think.
So I mentioned to her earlier, Ariana, she plays a character called Stevie, who runs the local radio station out of a very scary lighthouse at the edge of town on the on the coast. She's there on her own. She's there all night doing these shows.
Can you do an impression of her radio voice when she's talking?
Welcome to KBB. All of you amazing guys and girls out there, do you want to listen to me having another cigarette?
Yeah. She's a big smoker, isn't she?
Yes, but again, she looks cool. Anyone who looks like that and just carries it off looks cool. Smoke away. So she's out there on the town. She can see as this 100 on the day of the 100th anniversary. She can see the fog's coming back. So she saw the night before, and it caused all this craziness. So she can see the fog coming back. As the fog comes back into town and surrounds people's houses, they start to hear knocks on the door. Some people open the door and they get killed by these pirates. For some of the people, the pirates actually enter. They do a breaking and entering, and they enter the house and start killing people. And the film's really carried and narrated from the point of view of Stevie, who's in this lighthouse, because she's communicating to everybody over the radio, over the airways, saying, warning people, there's something in the fog. There's something in the fog. Stay away from the fog. And she could see the fog's moving to her son's house. So she's saying, Danny, get out of the house. Despite the fact she just told everybody to go into the house and lock the doors and windows. Basically, long story long, people die. Certain townsfolk run to the church, as you do, because it's the highest point of the town. So you like to think, fog or mist, it's not going to rise very quickly. There we meet the priest who has uncovered the fact that 100 years ago, the pirates didn't just crash onto the beach and their treasure was dispersed everywhere. It was actually the priests and the townsfolk that tricked them and stole their gold and caused them to crash. So the ghosty pirates are actually after the priests, and they're after retrieving their gold. Anyway, priests and pirates meet. He returns the gold. The pirates go away, but they don't really go away, and they come back and they kill him, and the movie's over.
There's that horror movie comeback moment where they go away and the fog disappears and everyone's relieved and starts to kind of go home and life gets back to normal. And then suddenly... And also, it's worth saying there's one close-up of one of the pirate ghosts where there's kind of like maggots running around their skin. But generally, they are just shadows or silhouettes coming through the fog. And it is really theatrical and really
I have to say,
effective.
I can't think of the name now, but I'm going to post on Instagram. There's almost a shot-for-shot moment where you see the pirate with his black silhouette with red eyes that was copied in a Korean movie.
I think you're talking about the Thai movie,
yep.
Uncle Boonmee, who can recall his past lives.
There you go.
Where one of the ghosts is, a silhouette with glowing red eyes.
Yeah.
And man, is it scary.
And
in
a
both
green
films,
backdrop,
when it just happens, in the fog, you know it's fairly dated practical effects.
I don't get scared easily. Monsters, zombies, werewolves, I think I have the strongest chance of any of fighting them off. But when it comes to somebody who's suffered from sleep paralysis, anything that's like a shadow, I'm going to go weak at the knees and pass out.
That is, it's a scary sight.
You can't really fight a shadow. Yeah. Weak at the knees and just swoon.
Yeah.
Take me, shadow, take me. Okay, so just my thoughts on that. So, as I said, firstly, a large part of the movie was focused around Stevie narrating and kind of giving her warnings to everybody over the airwaves. It reminded me of how important the airwaves and radios used to be, actually, and how not only were they kind of soothing and they would be a point of new knowledge, right? You'd hear new music on there, you'd hear news, all that kind of stuff. But
they were the podcasts of their day.
Yeah, but after a certain point, it would stop. So then stop broadcasting at 1, 2 in the morning, and then that was kind of, the end of the night, or that was... So we kind of had this, this circadian rhythm in a way, but through the radio. It reminded... The radio thing also reminded me of movies like The Warriors, where radio features so heavily. Again, that doesn't happen anymore. The thing that made me laugh, so many people died because they opened the door. Who the hell opens the door with a glowing mist surrounding the town, and someone's knocking in a really... strange, is it monosyllabic kind of way, like knocking like that?
Because of what I was saying about the numbers, I tried to count the knocks, and at the beginning it was 6, and I thought, this is a knock for every person they need to kill, because then it went down to 4. But then after that, it made no sense at all, so it might be a continuity thing. But all the people who were about to answer the door were already really scared. Yeah. So it's not like it's like, it's a small town, it's probably just a neighbour who's got lost. They were already petrified, and then they opened the door. Except for the guy who got warned by Stevie Lane from the radio station, said, whatever you do, do not open the door. And he's like...
It just must be... It's just
nice
kids.
Try. It's just someone fooling around.
Gremlins, I don't even answer my phone to no numbers. I try not to answer the door if it's someone I don't know.
Don't even look at texts if they come in past 11.
Yeah, no, there might be curses.
Yeah. Text.
What's great about this movie is it has that kind of very 70s horror feel where if you can survive till morning, till daylight, you'll make it. Again, they don't really do that so much in movies these days. I love the synths. One of the reasons I mentioned I love John Carpenter.
And also the coolest thing in the credits is somebody, I've forgotten the name, is credited with electronic realization.
Yeah, I saw that.
That's
so
amazing.
Cool. And for me, synths invoke a lot of emotion, and I don't know why that is, but it just does. There are lots of red accents in the film, and I tried to find something online, people talking about the use of colours in John Carpenter films, and I can't find anything, but I realised that he used a lot of reds and greens in his movies, and it's just something I noticed. Maybe I'll write a very extensive book about it.
I think also
he uses the same line repeated over and over again.
He uses lots of very simple, theatrical, stagey lighting, so a door... backlit by one spotlight with mist coming through it is the kind of thing you would see in like a small studio theatre production, but it works so well with what he's trying to achieve. I'm not as big a fan of JC as you are.
Yeah,
we've had this conversation over the years, but there are things that he does really well, and that's one of them for me. So
for me, neons and synths will always win. I should have been born in actual disco. Like I should be right now. There's people dancing inside of me, having a great time.
Maybe there are.
One of my biggest regrets.
That could be happening for you know.
My last point in this is there were lots of 70s butt busts.
Butt busts?
Yeah. I just made that up.
Tell us.
What was that 70s thing where everyone was wearing really high-waisted, tight jeans? So you could see what everybody had for dinner. Very, 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 very tight jeans. And I now call that butt bust.
There was lots of clashing plaid as well. Few scenes where there's 2 or 3 plaid. There's 2. Sorry,
you played my plaid.
Yeah, I think where there's 2 or 3 different types of plaid in one scene, and famously, you shouldn't wear stripes or checks if you're being filmed. Wardrobe should usually avoid that because it can look funny on film. It can come across badly.
That's it from me.
Yeah, same for me. I think as far as Halloween movie goes, it's definitely worth a watch. It's kind of slightly rickety in places, especially when it comes to effects.
All right.
Also has some really breathtaking moments. The ghost ship, when it arrives out of nowhere next to the trawler, that's a really, really good moment. And the jump scares, even though I've seen the film a few times, and even though I wasn't particularly scared by what was going on, the jump scares are really, really good. They get you every time. That's something that John Carpenter's really good at. Also really appreciated the shots at the beginning when you're meant to be in this sleepy town when nothing happens and the car alarms start going off and things start taking a life of their own. They're all very desolate, locked off shots that suddenly come to life where you start to notice something moving in them. And it builds this really eerie sense of foreboding and dread throughout. So you know bad things are happening, but equally it gets straight into things quite quickly. I thought it was about half an hour before we saw any of the supernatural stuff, but it happens more or less straight away, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think for anyone who is a John Carpenter fan, okay, I'll rephrase that. For anyone who's a fan of Halloween or The Thing or Big Trouble in Little China or Halloween 2 or Assault on Precinct 13, which I think are probably his biggest movies.
Yeah.
Please go back and look at his other work and look at the genesis of these films. Films like The Fog, films like They Live, that don't get a lot of airtime. They don't get a lot of... They're not really... Christine...
Prince of Darkness
as well. Prince of Darkness, one of my favourite films of all time. I mean, the story behind it is just... Twist my melon. Anyway, this has been an extended episode. Because it's two movies that we really enjoy.
What rating
Bada bing,
are you going to
bada
be
boom.
giving The Fog? How many handfuls of popcorn?
I've got 5 on it. It's gonna be
Five again?
Yeah, feeling good.
5.
Because I want to give it 5 so people go and watch it and discover more of John Carpenter.
Yeah. Okay. I'm giving it 3 because I think if you have to start somewhere with John Carpenter,
Doesn't sound as good. I've got 3 on it.
it should be Halloween or doesn't scan, does it?
No 3s are good. 3 Witches.
No, never a good thing. Or The Thing. If I had to pick one John Carpenter movie to watch again, it would be The Thing. And again,
You've seen that so many times.
It's definite. I think it's more about the stars who are in it and the effects shots in there than John Carpenter's style. But it is great. He's responsible for so much, but The Fog just doesn't do it for me on the same level for some reason. So 3 from me.
Well, hope you don't get killed by the fog now. Guys, thank you very much. Please remember to like and subscribe where you can. Please review us. That would be fantastic. Or indeed, if you're time poor, just stick a little rating on there.
Or
just a little rating.
Next time because we can do this now, next time you're at a house party or a dinner party or something, get all your friends' phones, go onto their podcast app and subscribe to this and rate it from their phones without telling them. So it will naturally just become part of their lives. Too elaborate?
No, that is a really good plan.
Good ruse.
Maybe you will be the next 007.
I couldn't possibly comment. I cannot confirm or deny.
That's going to be something so childish then. Tune in to next week's episode to find out what I was going to say. Bye, guys. Bye.
Bye.